I'm talking to Shawna Hennessy at the moment, who is a young mum and recently shared her experiences of homelessness on Katie Hannon. Unfortunately, after going on the show, she received a torrent of racial abuse, and a number of far-right activists used her story and spun it in a light that wasn't true. So I'm on with Shawna to set the record straight and have a conversation about what really happened. So Shawna, thank you so much for joining me on this call.
Thank you for having me and for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course, no problem, no problem. So look, we wanted to set the record straight with what happened with Katie Hannon, but I think it's important that people get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Okay, well, as you said, my name is Shawna Hennessy. I'm originally from Jamaica, but spent most of my early adult years in the Cayman Islands where my parents lived because my dad is from there. While there, I spent several years as a flight attendant for the national carrier, which is actually how I met my then spouse and moved to Ireland. I'm a girl mom times two.
Right.
Anyone who knows me will tell you that if I don't have a can of Red Bull in my hand, I'm on the way to get a Red Bull. And I am a chronic Dermot Kennedy listener and very loyal Liverpool supporter. So that's
Fantastic.
me in a nutshell.
Superb, superb. Well, look, we can't agree on the Liverpool thing, but we'll look past that for now. But look, you recently appeared on Katie Hannon talking about your experience of homelessness. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your experience
Correct.
with homelessness in Ireland?
Okay, so I'll give just a quick synopsis of my experience and then I'll tell you what I shared. So as I said,
Sure.
I moved here in 2015 with my Irish spouse and two children. Not long after the marriage broke down, the home that I was private renting was going up for sale. I was granted HAP and was viewing places. I was given, the usual amount of time to find new accommodation. I was going to viewings pretty much every single day. I could not get rental accommodation. Naturally, the time dwindled down. And on the day that I had to leave, I was left with no option but to just present myself to Wicklow County Council because I have no family here. As I said, I moved here with my spouse. My only family are my children, and their kids, they can't do anything. So I presented myself as homeless. During that period of homelessness, I was in multiple places. I spent time in Kildare. I was moved to Carlow. I was moved to places in Wicklow, like Arklow. And which is why I was delighted when I was asked just to share my experience of being in co-op housing, which is basically just a branch of county councils.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not just to highlight being on the other side of homelessness, but also just to share how helpful co-ops are because they take pressure off the councils.
Yeah.
So that's why I was on the show. It was a housing debate before the elections that just ran. The speakers from the major parties were there, and I was an audience member just to give my contribution on my experience.
Sure. So let's take a step back then. So you were invited on. How exactly were you invited on? Was it someone from Katie Hannon reaching out to you directly, or was it?
So basically, one of the producers just wanted someone who has had a positive experience with the co-op, which I have had, and I was happy to go on and give my contribution. It was explained to me what the program was about. And just, that I'm going to be given a minute and a half to maybe 2 minutes just to share the crux of my story and just what they were looking for. And I was happy to do it. And so I agreed and that was arranged. And that happened in November.
Okay. So then take us through what happens then on the show. How did the show unfold? So there was a couple of speakers that were speaking in the audience. Yes. Were you first? Were you last?
Okay.
Tell us how the show unfolded.
There were several speakers from the primary parliamentary groups, I guess. I'm not sure what you guys refer to them here. And on the second half of the show, Katie introduced me and just said, that on the sharper end of homelessness, myself and the young lady beside me, Chloe, have bared the brunt of it.
Yeah.
On the first half of the show, you had different experiences. There was a young man who spoke about his experience trying to get parking permission for a caravan. Somebody else who was, talking about the difficulties in students' accommodation.
Right.
And so the second half was really the crux of the housing crisis, which is homelessness. So I spoke, Katie started off by saying, shortly after a marital breakdown, you found yourself in homelessness. What was that like? And I explained it to her that it was very hard. I was unable to register my child in school because I didn't have an address.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't have Christmas because you're essentially in a room, Leon, with just
Yeah.
what belongings you can keep. I had to get rid of so many things because storage is costly. And in those circumstances, you don't know how long you're going to be in the situation. So I spoke at length of that, what it was like, how sad it was not being able to put up a Christmas tree, and just saying that I felt compelled to share my story because there is a stigma around homelessness, and that is a part of my story that I am trying to not be ashamed of.
Of course.
I also expressed how, when you're a parent, especially a mother, you feel like you're failing because your number one job is to protect and provide for your children.
Yeah.
I felt like I was failing at that. So I shared that. And, she goes on to say, okay. And then last year, you received a letter from Wicklow County Council to say, what was that like? And she said, oh, you must not know yourself. And, I kind of chuckled and I was like, I still don't know myself, because it was true.
Yeah.
What housing is like, trying to apply for social housing. There are people who are on the list for 25 years, which again is why I was there to endorse co-op housing, because it takes the pressure off the council. So there's less of a waiting time. So when I got that letter, I was absolutely delighted. 2023 was an amazing year for me. 2 months before I got that letter, I lived out my dream. I got to see Dermot Kennedy live in Marley Park. And then 2 months after that, I received a letter saying I am being nominated for housing, which just means that they're going to put you forward if you're interested, because people refuse for different reasons.
Of course.
Some people want to be close to family. It's an apartment. Not everybody wants to live in an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was given the background, and just to say that if I accept, I'm basically dealing with Cooperative Housing Ireland, not the council, which was fine with me. I was happy to do that. And I just shared, how amazing it has been. Our first Christmas was fantastic. As a matter of fact, the day of the interview was a week after my first anniversary in the apartment. So it was just, it was tremendous. And that was the joy that I expressed. There was quite some hang up on me saying I was nominated. People didn't seem to grasp what that means. And all that means is that the council, when the co-ops have properties available, whoever is next on their housing list, they put them forward. If the person is interested, which I was, they accept. And then you go through an application process with the co-op. You're not just handed the home. I had to do an interview with them, background check, financial records.
Of course.
And exactly. And then you have a 2-hour kind of information meeting. And they basically go through what's expected of you as a co-op tenant and what you can expect from them being your landlords, essentially.
Right.
So,
I
shared that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so you shared your story, and then
yes. So I shared my story, and Chloe was the young lady next to me, and Katie said, "And you're currently in a homeless hub." She actually was living in a homeless hub when she joined the program. She shared her experience of what it's been like, that not only was she in a hub far from family, but she had a young son, Jackson. He's 4 years old. He has health conditions. He had a cardiac procedure that was upcoming. And, Katie just went on to ask, what's the setup of the hub like and what it's been like for her. And she shared how depressing it is.
Of course.
Like sometimes poor Jackson, seeing her just crying and not understanding why. She, you know, voiced the same thing I said. You can't put up a Christmas tree, you can't do
Mm.
laundry, you can't cook meals. And so at the end of both of that, then the panelists contributed what they had to say.
Yeah.
One of the things that really spoke to me was Minister O'Brien. I always get his
Okay.
name disastrous, I'm sorry. Looked at me directly and he said, first of all, I just want to say, you're not a failure. You have not failed your children.
Of course.
And exactly. And, you know, they explained to her that it's devastating that she's in that situation. And the program continued. In between breaks, I was talking to Chloe, and I just remember saying to her, the last thing I said to her before at the last commercial break, because the then housing minister wanted to speak to her. I said, listen, I said, your story is out there now. Something has to be done, whether
Of
it's
course.
private rented accommodation found for you, whether you're offered a social home, some kind of intervention will have to happen. And it was great. The producers thanked me for my contribution, and I carried on. And then
Yeah.
the disaster struck.
100%. So I think before we go into what happened after,
Mhm.
I definitely want to reiterate that, you
Yeah.
know, firstly, what you had to go through was really difficult, you know, in your experience with homelessness. So I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. You should be really proud of yourself for bringing yourself through it and for doing what you've done for you know your kids. You know,
Mhm.
it's I think it's something that my mom always used to say, and I'm reminded of it when I'm hearing your story. And it's my mom used to say, "Oh, people will say that they'll die for their kids, but the real difficulty is living for your kids and
Yes.
doing
Oh,
whatever you can to
gosh,
help
you're
them."
gonna get me
So,
emotional now. Yes,
so
because yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
so yeah, so
It's
I just I like
much
it.
harder living for your kids than it is to say you would die for your kids. Yeah.
100%. So
Mhm.
I think you should be really proud of yourself, and also for, you know, sharing words of encouragement. You know, with the other young lady who shared
Yeah.
her experience after the show. Like, that's
Mhm.
really important. You're not allowing your experiences to hold you back from helping others or from keeping you quiet. You know, you're speaking out so that you can
Of
help others,
course,
which is
yeah. It's
a
to
really
show
commendable
that,
thing.
yeah, it's to show that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I've been where you are. I understand what it's like as a mother to be in that situation. And just to say, you know, hold on, your happy ending is coming, just like I'm
Yeah,
living right now.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So let's talk about then after the show.
Mhm.
You'd wrapped up the segment, you'd gone home. What happened in the coming days or weeks?
So the program aired. It's a live program. So that was Monday night.
Yep.
The program aired. RTE shared clips on Twitter, just, you know, like my own, I think, just said Shawna shares what it was like being in homelessness and now being homed. And
Yeah.
then the second video tweet was Chloe's contribution.
Okay.
It was on their Instagram page, Chloe's story. And as expected, a few people were like, oh, it's terrible. You know, some people kind of resonated with what I said, that yes, the government are doing something. I'm proof of that, but that there's still so much more to be done. Wednesday, which was 2 days after the program, I
Yeah.
was in college and I was in the last class of my day. And my sister reached out to me and said, look what I just found on Twitter. And I opened it, and it was a screenshot of me and Chloe next to each other. And the caption said, this is why Ireland is mad.
Mm.
African woman sitting next to Irish homeless woman bragging about being housed.
Okay.
And my heart dropped. I excused myself from the class. I sat in the car and I bawled my eyes out. I remember calling the
Yeah.
producer, and God love her, I know she must have been terrified getting that call because I was frantic. I was just like, this is what happened. I look terrible. This can't be happening. And in fairness to her, she, you know, kind of let me get through it. And she said, forward it on to me. She said, we haven't seen any of this, but she said, pass it on to me. I'm
Yeah.
going to consult my overheads and figure out what to do. And that evening, they got in touch with me and said, asked all the information, asked where else it was. And I went looking, and it was everywhere. The clip had circulated everywhere. Like, I never knew the definition of viral until I saw that. It was on Facebook,
Yeah.
it was on Twitter, it was on Instagram, it was on LinkedIn. Any platform you can think of, it was on. I left it in their hands, and they were trying to figure out where the edit came from. And we kind of at first we're kind of thinking it's probably best to just leave it alone, which I initially agreed to, but I couldn't because it began spiraling out of control. The narrative, the amount of nationalities I was assigned. I'm Somalian, I am Nigerian, I am Brazilian. But the main narrative was, I am an illegal immigrant who was housed over this young woman who has a sickly child, which was not the case. We were not
It's not the
homeless
case at all.
the same time. We were not homeless in the same place.
Yeah.
But that was the narrative that was pushed. And
Yeah.
it's still spiraling. So that's what I've been dealing with.
Yeah. And footage was edited to make it look like
Yes.
you
So
were speaking afterwards.
What the individual did was they reversed the order. So Chloe tells her story of being in a hub with Jackson, and he has conditions and she had to quit her job. And then it cuts to the second half of my story. So she tells her story and it's very somber, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts to Katie saying, and last November, you got your letter from Wicklow County Council. And I'm like, yeah, and it's great. We're in our forever home.
Yeah.
So I just look insensitive, like, yeah, whatever. Too bad for you. Here's my happy story.
Yeah.
And that, along with the caption that I am this illegal immigrant who was housed over her, essentially, spread like wildfire.
Absolutely. And it is a method that people who are trying to cause division are using in terms of editing things to make them look a different way.
Precisely.
And that wasn't the case at all. You had shared your story first. It was a completely different story to Chloe's, and then Chloe was asked to share her story afterwards. Yeah. So
correct.
Okay.
The people were saying, oh, I don't know how she could be so insensitive. And fair play to that Irish girl to sit there, as if there was this animosity.
Yeah.
An Irish YouTuber labeled it a ritualistic humiliation.
Okay. Yeah.
That, it was done to humiliate Chloe.
Yeah. I think there's kind of provocative and emotive terms that are used to try and get people's attention. And that was certainly,
correct,
the case here. And it really is a shame because you went on with all of the right intentions to share your really difficult story,
yes.
in a way to show others that there is hope out there, and what you've done, for your children. And even you were consoling Chloe after she had spoken as well. And then all of a sudden you're being painted as this really insensitive person when that's not the case at all. In fact, you are someone that has very clearly a lot of empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah. As I said, she's a single parent. I'm a single parent. I knew exactly what she was feeling because it's a very, very hard situation to be in. I would not wish homelessness on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's degrading. It's depressing. It's a terrible experience, especially when you have small children. It really is.
So, Shawna, how has all this impacted you when you've seen the stuff, when you've listened to it? How has this impacted you?
I have cried pretty much every day since November 13th when that clip circulated. I have not been sleeping, and I've been to my doctor. I'm on antidepressants. When I do take sleeping tablets to try and sleep, the dreams that plague me, I don't want to sleep. I am having constant panic attacks. I can't really be out in public too long because if people look at me, I kind of think, oh my God, they've recognized me and what will they do to me? It has been
God.
absolutely horrendous. I went through a
Yeah.
period where I was no longer in love with this home that I was so grateful for. I remember sitting down and saying to a friend, and I'm just like, did I make a mistake accepting this home? Like, should I give it up? And the person kind of said to me, why would you want to put your child back in homelessness?
Yeah.
So, like, that's the emotions you're going through. And RTE did do an article. Jack McCarran did a wonderful follow-up. And as I said to him, like, I felt, and to some extent still do, feel like the most hated person in Ireland. The names that I have been called, the names that my children have been called, the threats that
Yeah.
have been made. Like, my character has been completely assassinated. I look like a horrid, horrid person. And that's not me.
It isn't. And I can tell, like, from the different times that we've spoken, and from what you've shared about why you've done this, and kind of why you want to share your story, like, everything about you is really commendable, so it really is a shame that you've had to go through that. You
It
mentioned to me
really
before
is.
as well that you were contacted by An Garda Síochána. Why was that?
So most recently, a few days ago, a video was uploaded. So, like, it's still gaining momentum. And threats have been made to the extent that a welfare check was ordered to be done on me.
Right.
I won't go too far into details. We have spoken about it off camera because it is an ongoing investigation, but it's gotten
course.
to the point where not only have I filed reports, but they have been made aware of threats that I'm unaware of that are so serious that they showed up at my door unexpectedly, just unannounced, to do a welfare check to make sure that I was okay. And
God.
I mean, I held it together for as long as I could when they were here, but that it broke me down all over again. It was just like reopening the wound. I'm living in fear. And people can say,
Yeah.
oh, it's just keyboard warriors. You see the climate that we're
Yeah.
living in now, Leon. Like, it just takes one person to take it too far. It takes one
To take it
person
exactly.
and regurgitate that hate. And that's why I was so grateful for the opportunity to address this, because people need to realize that, like, their words have impact. Like, I am so terrorized. Like, I'm trying so hard to not cry right now because
Of course. No, it is. It really is tough.
it's terrifying to see the vile names that I've been called.
Yeah.
The things that people have said they will do if they ever see me out and about. The conclusions people have jumped to. One person on a YouTube video yesterday said, oh, I'm fresh off the boat and English is clearly not my native tongue. I have a degree, Leon, in language and communications. I did my undergrad in language and communications.
Yeah.
So to even say that, and then, people speculating that I'm so ungrateful because I came from a mud hut. As I said before, I moved here from the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
A tropical paradise. I didn't come here for a better life. I came here as a family unit. Unfortunately, that has not worked out.
Yeah.
I have worked while I'm here. I pay taxes. I'm currently studying. I have done volunteer work. And this narrative that I'm so fresh off the boat. I've been here for 10 years.
Yeah. It sounds to me, when you're saying all of these things, and it really is difficult, but you're a model citizen that's that fell on tough times, has now gone
I
through it.
appreciate that. I'm glad you see it that way.
Yeah, no, and I think that's why it's important that we have this conversation, because it's one thing when people who we know are going to engage in racist behavior are engaging in racist behavior. There are some people that you just know and you'll never change their mind. No matter how much you want to convince them that you're a good person, they will never believe it.
I am
But
so happy you said that.
Yeah, it's the other people that they're trying to convince that you're not a good person,
Precisely.
that you wanted to speak to.
Exactly. Can I just read you something actually on that note? Because again, Jack McCarran, wonderful journalist. I completely appreciate what he did.
Of course.
But in the midst of him doing his article, he spoke to an online privacy and safety consultant. And what she said was, the goal is twofold: to harass and discredit particular communities, and also about silencing people, making it so unpleasant to be a part of the conversation that people end up not putting themselves forward or accepting invitations to be part of the discussion. And
Exactly. I mean,
that precisely, that was
yeah.
another kind of motivation of me agreeing to go on the program, because growing up Black in Ireland, as you know, is not easy.
No.
And being the parent of mixed race children, I want my children and other mixed race children, whether they're Black or whatever, just being mixed race, to know that they are no less worthy, they are no less deserving, and they should be seen and heard.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Everyone, deserves to be able to tell their story, and deserves to be able to contribute, respectfully to conversations.
Precise. And like you said earlier, some people you can't change their mind, because for some, where I've gone on to the comments and I've kind of explained to them the situation, it's like, well, your child is only half Irish.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but half Irish, it's still Irish. So people are looking at me as not deserving of a home, not realizing that there's an Irish child in this equation. My child is one less statistic of Irish homelessness. She should be no less qualified of a home because of what her mother looks like.
Of course. No, absolutely.
But people just can't look past me.
Yeah.
It's, okay, well, why do you deserve a home? It's not just about me. I have a child. They're hardly going to put a child in the house by themselves.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's the model that people are wanting. But I really do want to thank you for your bravery in coming on and sharing your story, and for setting the record straight, because that wasn't an easy thing to go through, and it very easily could have been the thing for you where you say, I'm going to let them win. I'm going to bury my head in the sand, and for the rest of my life I'm going to go around scared.
Which is why it struck when you shared what your mother said, because I can tell you, I am only sitting here talking to you because of my child. Because I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to be seeing what I'm seeing. I don't want to live like this. So when your mother tells you that it's harder to live for your children, believe me, she is 110% correct. Because I've been there where I really kind of questioned
everything.
Is it worth it?
Well, absolutely. It is worth it. And I really want to thank you, Shawna, for taking the time to come on, have a conversation, set the record straight. You've shared that ultimately you were a victim of a spin on a story to make you look bad and assassinate your character. And through it all, you have risen, you have stayed strong, you've, lived for your children, and you are making Ireland a better place by doing what you do. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I do appreciate your words. Thank you so very much.